There we go. All right. Hey, everyone. I'm Matt, and welcome to the Good Trouble Show. The Pentagon released its long-awaited report on the historical record of U.S. government involvement with unidentified anomalous phenomenon, UAP Volume 1. This 63-page piece of Pentagon propaganda lies to congressional lawmakers, their staff, and more importantly, you, the American public, and the world writ large. The report is the swan song of the former director of the Pentagon's UFO program, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, AARO, Dr. Shan Kirkpatrick. Now, due to either sheer incompetence or outright purposefully torpedoing the truth, Dr. Kirkpatrick's ego-driven leadership was nothing short of a dumpster fire. Today, we have a special show for you. First, we will do a deep dive into what Congress and you may not know about AARO, Dr. Shan Kirkpatrick, and whistleblower David Grusch, followed by a pre-recorded interview from earlier today with Stanford Professor Dr. Garry Nolan on his thoughts on the AARO report. We had to do this interview earlier today, just schedule-wise, that was his only availability. Finally, investigative journalist from News Nation, Ross Coulthart, will join us live to discuss his take on this mess. But first, please hit the subscribe and thumbs up button on YouTube. You can also find us on Twitter at Good Trouble Show and all other social media platforms at The Good Trouble Show. Leave a comment, share, like, give a thumbs up, and subscribe. All those things encourage these platforms to spread the word about our show to the masses. You can also find us on your favorite podcasting platforms. Just search for The Good Trouble Show. Subscribe, leave a review, all that good stuff. We also need your help keeping the lights on. You can become a supporter of The Good Trouble Show by going to www.patreon.com/The Good Trouble Show. And for the price of a Starbucks coffee, you can support our work. Finally, on YouTube, Super Chats are open and are a great way to show your financial appreciation for our work. I also want to thank our financial supporters on Patreon and YouTube and our chat moderators who volunteer their time to do this. And thanks to everyone who supports our show. And we've kind of had some weird stuff happen on YouTube. Hopefully we'll stay up. For some reason, it'll say out of the blue, no data. So if for some reason our feed goes down, it should come back up. I've also, for some weird reason, been getting a lot of just strange phone calls on my cell phone. So who knows if Big Daddy Ronald Moultrie is trying to derail us here. Anyway, okay, so moving on. So yesterday, the Pentagon's UFO office, AARO, or the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, released the, quote, report on the historical record of U.S. government involvement with unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP Volume 1. Just sounds like a freaking horror movie. The report noted that, quote, AARO found no evidence that any U.S. government investigation, academic-sponsored research, or official review panel has confirmed that any sighting of a UAP represented extraterrestrial technology. Also noting that, quote, all investigative efforts at all levels of classification concluded that most sightings were ordinary objects and phenomena the result of misidentification. And perhaps one of the most telling statements, quote, AARO determined, based on all information provided to date, that claims involving specific people, known locations, technological tests, and documents allegedly involved in or related to the reverse engineering of extraterrestrial technology are inaccurate and was the result of circular reporting from a group of individuals who believe this to be the case despite the lack of any evidence. I mean, come on, really. This conclusion is absolutely no surprise considering where it comes from. AARO's former director, Dr. Shan Kirkpatrick. Now, the first thing everyone should consider is that Shan is replacing one conspiracy with another. Think about it. In his recent op-eds in Scientific American, Shan has gone full conspiracy theorist, spreading a wacky tale that a group of UFO zealots has hoodwinked Congress into believing that the government has a secret UFO crash recovery and back engineering program, convincing members like Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who, by the way, had zero interest in this topic. Now, Shan supposedly doesn't believe in this quote-unquote crash retrieval program conspiracy, but he promotes a conspiracy theory about Congress. It's a conspiracy theory he throws out with absolutely zero evidence, none. Sean Kirkpatrick is saying to you, trust me, bro, it's all a conspiracy. Don't worry about the evidence. The Pentagon has your back. How un-American. And how ignorant do Sean Kirkpatrick and the Pentagon think the American people are? What Sean Kirkpatrick is telling you is that a whole group of former high-ranking government officials, military veterans, and scientists with the nation's highest security clearances are willfully destroying their reputations and career based on some silly belief system to fool Congress. Was David Grusch, a decorated military intelligence official who held more security clearance tickets than just about anyone, duped? Was Senator Gillibrand duped? Was Senator Marco Rubio duped, and other members of Congress? Was the Inspector General, who had the authority to investigate and see all of the classified data whistleblower David Grusch based his PPD-19 allegations on, duped? Well, that's what Sean Kirkpatrick wants you to believe with zero evidence. How fucking arrogant is that? Now, speaking of evidence, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick said this to Senator Kirsten Gillibrand 1 year after taking the helm at AARO.
I should also state clearly for the record that in our research, AARO has found no credible evidence thus far of extraterrestrial activity, off-world technology, or objects that defy the known laws of physics.
Yeah. So Kirkpatrick has never stated, not once, what the AARO evidentiary standards are. Not once. Kirkpatrick tells Gillibrand there is no evidence of, quote, extraterrestrial activity. Sean, based on what evidentiary standards? What constitutes clear and compelling evidence to you of NHI? I mean, does Kirkpatrick need a freaking Klingon bird of prey to land in the Pentagon parking lot? What about his public statement regarding metallic orbs doing non-prosaic things? How about the material analysis he sent to Oak Ridge National Laboratory run by Battelle, it's a mouthful, Battelle Memorial Institute, which he later claimed was a missile casing? Where is Sean Kirkpatrick's evidence? Where is AARO's evidence? Did Kirkpatrick and Oak Ridge Battelle send the test data for peer review? Where are those peer-reviewed papers? Who fact-checked Oak Ridge National Laboratories with this material? We don't know. We have absolutely no idea because Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick wants you to trust him and the Pentagon and forget about the evidence. How hypocritical is that? Now, notice Kirkpatrick and company continue to use the phrase aliens and extraterrestrials. You even see this space aliens thing with Julian Barnes in the New York Times pushing, or more so parroting, Pentagon talking points. He does it all the time. Why? Because it allows Kirkpatrick and AARO, it allows them to leave out sort of other likely explanations that all of this is not from some distant planet. It is a sneaky, lawyerly way of avoiding accountability by having plausible deniability. Quote, we never said it was non-human intelligence. We said it wasn't space aliens or extraterrestrials. It is their get-out-of-free-jail card, so they are not liable for it being something else. And let's face it, I don't think any of us know where this is from. So you must ask yourself how Sean arrived at all these conclusions. After all, he stated that AARO had all the power needed to investigate this quote-unquote conspiracy. Kirkpatrick didn't tell you the whole truth. Now, while AARO was legally authorized to receive classified information on anything to do with UAP, it had zero, and I underline this, zero, power to investigate it. Kirkpatrick has not been telling you the full truth. None, absolutely none of AARO's agents, including liaisons from the Air Force Office of Special Investigations and the FBI, had 1811 authority, or what is called special agent authority. Now, what does this mean? This means that AARO agents could not conduct search and seizure, they couldn't make arrests, they couldn't depose people, they couldn't subpoena anyone. So you ask yourself, how can Shan Kirkpatrick, how can AARO conduct a thorough investigation without 1811 authority? The answer is you can't. So while Shan technically had access to these programs, he could not legally demand to be read into those programs because he had no special agent authority, and the 40-ish people that work at AARO do not have that authority as well. Now, when it comes to special access program compartmentalization, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what compartment you don't have access to, and neither did Shan Kirkpatrick. The gatekeepers of the crash retrieval and back engineering program and its portfolio manager, the CIA, knew he had no power to enforce any of this. Do you really think these people who have been illegally hiding this for decades would just volunteer the goods to AARO? I mean, of course not. Kirkpatrick was impotent. Now, Kirkpatrick has repeatedly taken passive-aggressive shots at whistleblower David Grusch for not going to AARO. Now, first, David Grusch knew AARO did not have the investigative authority required. Grusch had already provided classified information and testimony to Congress and the Inspector General. This is new. It was also well known that advisor Shan Kirkpatrick brought onto AARO were and are under active investigation by the Inspector General. Let me repeat that. Advisor Shan Kirkpatrick brought onto AARO are under active investigation by the Inspector General. Now, Grusch testifying to AARO would likely have jeopardized those active investigations, and of course he wouldn't want to do that. Now, whistleblowers refusing to go to AARO infuriated Kirkpatrick. It humiliated Kirkpatrick. In November, Shan used a United States senator to try and squeeze David Grusch to go in and testify. So, Dave Grusch emailed AARO and the others on that group email and said to Kirkpatrick, look, I'm authorized to discuss any UAP special access programs, but am I authorized to discuss with AARO the associated conventional programs that are part of the crash recovery program cover-up? You see, Dave would have had to have discussed with AARO the non-UAP related compartmented programs to explain the nested hierarchy of how the Pentagon and the CIA were hiding the crash recovery and back engineering programs from Congress. The reply to Dave from Kirkpatrick stated, quote, "We can receive any and all UAP related material." Dave said, fine. Please provide in writing that I am cleared and protected to discuss any classified non-UAP related programs. Kirkpatrick's reply, "We can handle everything, Dave. Just come on in. Trust me, bro." Kirkpatrick would not provide in writing to David Grusch that he was authorized and protected to discuss ancillary classified programs. Why? Because Kirkpatrick knew that getting those written authorizations from ODNI and others would take months, and Kirkpatrick's time was running out. Kirkpatrick, he was hell-bent on cleaning up those loose ends and getting Dave in the door of AARO, but refused to give written assurances to David Grusch that he was protected. Dave literally risked an unauthorized disclosure and jail time without written authorization to discuss the unrelated classified programs had he gone in and talked to Kirkpatrick and AARO. Now, it It would have been a trap that Dave would have walked into. Less than 3 weeks, think about that, 3 weeks before Shan's departure as head of AARO, and Grusch knew they would use his testimony to try and discredit him. Of course, Kirkpatrick, he just did that anyway. Now, word got around that Shan Kirkpatrick was sketchy as hell, and let's face it, he is sketchy as hell. And AARO was a Project Blue Book 2.0. Literally no one trusted Dr. Shan Kirkpatrick and AARO, and for good reason. They went straight to the Inspector General to file PPD-19s, and as a matter of fact, we notified certain members of Congress that this was going on as early as May. So, Shan Kirkpatrick announced his retirement in November, but actually, Shan decided to do this much earlier, and the public doesn't know about this. What is not known is that Undersecretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks was wildly upset and pissed off at Kirkpatrick going off the reservation with his unhinged, passive-aggressive LinkedIn post. So, Shan Kirkpatrick, as a fuck you to Undersecretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks, he decided right then to punch out at the end of the year and soon after landed a cushy gig at Oak Ridge National Laboratories run by Battelle as Chief Technology Officer for Defense and Intelligence Programs. Now, what you may not know is that Shan Kirkpatrick at AARO gave huge sums of money to Oak Ridge National Labs and Battelle in exchange for material analysis and this is important, and for Oak Ridge National Laboratories and Battelle to provide advisors to AARO. He paid them to provide advisors to AARO. So now, think about this. Kirkpatrick is working for the agency he gave money to months ago. I mean, think about that. Talk about a conflict of interest. It's not only a conflict of interest, but it is actually illegal. U.S. Code Section 207 states former senior executive branch officials are prohibited from negotiating or accepting employment with any person or entity involved in a particular matter in which they were personally and substantially involved during the last year of their government service. This restriction applies for 2 years after leaving government service. And this is who Shan Kirkpatrick has been hired by. To top it off, Kirkpatrick is an unpaid advisor to AARO, which is a clear violation of the General Accountability Office's Anti-Deficiency Act, which prohibits people from working for free for the government. You just can't do that. So, all of this comes down to two possibilities, if you think about it. Dr. Shan Kirkpatrick was hoodwinked and tricked by his advisors, or he was sent on a mission to torpedo AARO by turning it into Condon 2.0, lying to Congress and lying to you, the American people, in exchange for the reward of a nice retirement gig at Oak Ridge National Laboratories. Now, personally, I think it's the latter. One of Shan Kirkpatrick's key advisors at AARO was a gatekeeper of the crash retrieval program who worked out of the intelligence community. A gatekeeper, somebody that was involved with keeping all of this illegally hidden from Congress. Now, as a matter of fact, there were more than a few of these legacy program gatekeepers advising Kirkpatrick, which we revealed on the Good Trouble Show months ago. All of this begs to question, how did Shan Kirkpatrick know to bring these particular people in to advise AARO? Who told him to? Who told Shan Kirkpatrick to bring in gatekeepers to manage the henhouse? Also ask yourself this, what if Oak Ridge National Laboratories, Battelle Memorial Institute are part of the cover-up? The people Shan Kirkpatrick is now working for. Shan Kirkpatrick's former boss, Ronald Moultrie, was on the advisory board of Battelle, and funny enough, Moultrie had his links to Battelle erased on the internet after yours truly published his association with Battelle on the Good Trouble Show. This is the same Ronald Moultrie who testified to Congress about UAP as the head of the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, the same office that has targeted whistleblowers, David Grusch, Lou Elizondo. This is also, which you don't know, is the same Ronald Moultrie who refused to be briefed on UAP before he showed up in front of Congress. He refused. He did not want to be briefed at all on the topic before he testified in front of Congress. Why? So he had plausible deniability in front of Congress. Moultrie lied to Congress by willful ignorance. You have to ask yourself, did Moultrie promise to reward Shan Kirkpatrick with a cushy gig if he went along with the cover-up? It's interesting, Moultrie abruptly left OUSDINS just 2 months after Kirkpatrick left. This absolutely surprised everyone. This guy was a lifer. Everyone expected him to run his tenure out to the end of this administration. It's shady as shit. Now, at the end of the day, we are left with the question of whether Shan Kirkpatrick was just incompetent or was doing the bidding of his minders. I can tell you from multiple people, no one, absolutely no one, liked Shan Kirkpatrick. These are people before ever dealing with him at AARO. Multiple people describe Shan Kirkpatrick as problematic, arrogant, an arrogant scientist who fancied himself a spy whose most important thing to him was being the most intelligent person in the room. What people should look into in FOIA is at Spacecom. He was Deputy J2 and was forced out, reportedly due to how difficult he was to work with. Now, for the longest time, I figured he was just the bumbling professor, but now, after his actions, this report, in my opinion, was part of the Pentagon and intelligence community machine that continues to lie to you and Congress about the reality of UFOs, the existence of a UFO crash recovery and back engineering program, and continues to lie and cover up CIA's involvement, their Office of Global Access that is involved in running this whole crash recovery operation. All of this report, this propaganda, this freezing out of journalists like Ross Coulthart, who will be on in a bit, and Chris Sharp and others that actually know what the hell they're talking about when it comes to this subject, Susan Go and the Pentagon froze them out, requiring the reporters that covered this to sign some kind of backroom deal that they wouldn't talk about this prior to it going public. That's propaganda. That is the same kind of bullshit that happened in the 50s and 60s with the CIA buying off reporters in order for them to publish CIA talking points. It's wrong. It's un-American. All right, enough of that. So I know it's a lot to dig into. So let's move on to Garry Nolan. Now, there's a lot to unpack that we just talked about. So let's roll an interview we shot earlier today with Dr. Garry Nolan and see what he had to think about this dumpster fire of a report from Shan Kirkpatrick. Here we go. Our next guest is the Ratchford and Carlotta A. Harris Professor in the Department of Pathology at Stanford University School of Medicine and the Executive Director of the Board for the Soul Foundation. Joining us today to give his personal opinion on the AARO Historical Report, please welcome Dr. Garry Nolan. Dr. Nolan, how are you, sir?
Great. Nice to be here again.
And actually, this will be your fourth time here. You're turning into a total regular here at the Good Trouble Show. So we're super glad to have you as always.
Same.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so let's dig into this thing. And of course, right before this, I aired sort of a deep dive into AARO, Dr. Shan Kirkpatrick, and their methodology. What is your reaction to part one of this historical report?
Well, it makes me really worry about what part two is going to be. I mean,
That's for sure. It's not going to be a good sequel.
It disappoints me, obviously, because it's a masterclass in unscientific bias. You know, the language they use, the conclusions they draw, it's, you know, obvious that they decided what they wanted to say before they looked at a lot of the evidence. And that's just not how science is done. I mean, compare this report to the French Comida report from 1999. Now, I mean, that's how you do a study, right? High-ranking officials, scientists, detailed case analysis. I mean, that's a model of academic and scientific integrity. But this 2024 report doesn't even reference that. I mean, and that's a case where the French came to the conclusion that many of these cases can be explained as nothing other than non-human intelligence, right? They'd already thrown out all the cases that had obvious telltale signs of natural phenomena or mistakes. So, I mean, that bothers me because this 2024 report feels like a high school hackathon project, right? Not a serious scientific inquiry. And it's really a disservice to the public and to the scientific community in general. You know, I mean, and here's one of the things. My sources inside of AARO tell me that there was a lot of pressure to rush this report out with preconceived conclusions.
I believe that.
And that folks on the inside were unhappy with the narrative being pushed. And the DNI was also unpleased at this point, post it coming out, because they weren't even given the chance to vet this in the way that they thought it should have been. So, you know, when you've got a report that's pushing an agenda that, other than following the evidence, they basically push what it is their objective is, you've really got to wonder, what are they trying to hide? You know, I mean, for instance, they don't even compare to the 2023 and 2022 reports, which were, of course, reports of things that are different than this. This is a historical context. But they don't even give any numbers of what it is that they were covering over the last 40 years, right? So there's lack of detailed data, no geographic breakdown, no info on shapes and sizes of the kinds of things. They didn't define the criteria by which they were going to be coming to their conclusion. So, you know, if we want to get to the bottom of this, we need transparency, objectivity, and a willingness to follow the data where it leads. And the 2024 report fails on every account.
Now, when you say sort of disappointment on the inside, do you mean within AARO?
Within AARO. This is from people within AARO. Yeah. I mean,
okay.
I mean, that place is not a locked vault.
Right. So of course, and you know, and you just spoke about data, you know, so it seems like they are making claims, you know, without any data, which of course is what what Kirkpatrick and the others, you know, always sort of accuse us of, is saying all this stuff without data. Well, where is their data? And are they going to present the raw data? That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
And
well,
why,
I mean,
why aren't they?
It's the oldest trick in the book. Do as I say, not as I do. AARO is deeply guilty of the very thing that they're accusing others of. In fact, of what most of the so-called debunkers do. And it's a problem more so because what they're doing is obviously deliberate, right? I mean, I think there's a lot of people who come forward with whatever their anecdotes might be or their results or their data, but they do so in the spirit of objectivity. But in this case, what they're doing is deliberate. You know, they want us to take their word for it, no questions asked. That's not science. That's not how science is done. Science demands evidence. If they are so sure of their conclusions, why hide the data? Right? I mean, I would like to demand right now, here and now, that they release the data on which their conclusions are made. Don't expect anybody to take your conclusions, trust me, bro, without giving us the data.
Right.
And so it's just the wrong way to go about it. And it's problematic because, you know, at the beginning when they set themselves up, Dr. Kirkpatrick literally said, we're going to do this by the numbers, by the book, by the science. We're going to do it the right way. Okay, well, if you said that, why did you do it this way? I mean, it's not transparency, it's smoke and mirrors. And, you know, for instance, for me, as a scientist in cancer research, you know, making assumptions and claims without evidence is like claiming I've cured cancer without showing the data, right? Or claiming I cured cancer in mice and then trying to extrapolate that information to humans. You can't. In science, you have to show your work, all of it, not just the bits and pieces that support your claims. So until they release the raw data, their conclusions are simply put unsupportable. And what bothers me is not so much what they're willing to put out. What bothers me are the 1950s style stenographers like Julian Barnes of the New York Times,
Yeah.
who seem willing to just write what it is that they say without any consideration of whether or not what they're saying is wrong. It's like, I mean, I'll go further on the 1950s stenographer. I mean, it's like the DOD should be asking him or saying, hey, doll, why don't you go get me a cup of coffee? You know, it's the same kind of dismissive attitude in treating the mainstream media and the New York Times of all places as if they are some sort of an errand girl. I mean, come on. You know, and I'm going to call out, you know, I've had a conversation with Shane Harris at one point, months ago, where he said, well, you know, look, these are all nice stories, and I want to believe the stories, but they're not supporting it with evidence. Well, Shane, you just reported on something, and you didn't ask them for what their evidence is.
Right.
So why is it no standard?
Yeah, no, it's this whole trust me, bro thing that Kirkpatrick was. Yeah, the hypocrisy is insane. And the other thing too, you know, speaking about the media, the fact that, for instance, News Nation was completely frozen out of that whole sort of pre-dropping of all this information. Chris Sharp and Mark von Rennenkamp, journalists that actually have been tracking this story, they're educated in the subject, and would ask hard questions, they were left out of that process, completely frozen out, which just blows me away.
Well, I mean, it's just unfortunate. I mean, it's interesting. If they actually want to even convince the people who have, let's say, a different expectation than what they put out, if they had brought in those kinds of individuals and they had done it in a fair way, in a right way, they could still put out their report. And the New York Times and the Washington Post could still run with their stories the way that they did. But at least they wouldn't give everybody else the reason to be up in arms about it with righteous indignation.
Right.
And you know, so they just open themselves up to you know, this kind of problem. You know, and further, I mean, look at it this way. If you don't think that the Chinese and the Russians are watching this, then you're making a mistake, right? So the Chinese have already basically said that they have a program to at least investigate this. So, you know, we're living in a pretty unstable world right now. If the Chinese wanted to really embarrass the United States, all they would need to do is come out and say something far more positive about this than what the DOD has said. And they could make the DOD look like a bunch of fools. They could make our government look like fools. So to the extent that this is a problem worldwide, or the extent that we're dealing with this as if it were an issue of international relations, the DOD is, by its very actions, and AARO, perhaps more specifically, and perhaps this is why DNI is upset with them, are putting the nation at risk.
Absolutely.
That's on their shoulders. It's on their head.
It totally is. And at the end of the day, it completely boils down to that when they are putting something out that, in my opinion, is misleading the public, is an attempt to mislead members of Congress and their staffers, that in and of itself jeopardizes national security. Now, going back to the press again, one of the things that, and I'm sure Julian Barnes overlooked it as well, is in this report, they state that 32%, exactly 32% of the cases studied that they cannot explain. That is literally 5 times the amount of cases categorized as unexplained in Project Blue Book. 32%. Why is the press completely ignoring this?
You know, I don't know. I mean, it's a case of, you know, not looking at the evidence, and trying to decide ahead of time what it is that you want to focus on to, it's like the bird with the broken wing effect, right? The mother bird that pretends that its wing is broken to draw the predator away from the nest. I mean, that's really what this is an example of. That I've said this many times. Science is advanced by paying attention to the things that don't fit on the line. It's the data off the curve where the discoveries are made. And so 32% is a huge number. I mean, and this is kind of strange because even Kirkpatrick pointed out previously, and AARO pointed out previously about these metal spheres that are seen moving in inexplicable ways. I mean, if that's not evidence, what is? And that kind of comes around to the question of what's the threshold for what evidence is? And when are you going to define what it is that meets the threshold for something that is not explicable by current standards? You can't hold everything in limbo forever until you wait until the data meets what your expectations should be, right? So, look, in science, you lay out your criteria up front. You don't move the goalposts later. By not putting their standards in writing, it allows them to dismiss any evidence that they want, anytime they want.
Right.
And it's playing a game where only one side defines the rules as they go. It's called cheating. That's the
pretty much.
That's pretty much the very definition of cheating.
Right.
And so if they're serious about this investigation, they need to define at what point something is doing, has movements or is moving in ways that are incapable of being explained. You can't say, I just want more data until the data fits what your narrative might be, or hope that people forget about what the case is. The bottom line is, without clear criteria, this report is more smoke and mirrors than science. And AARO needs to step up, put their standards in writing. They need to stop playing this game with it's not space aliens, it's not ET, because there's lots of other hypotheses out there that it might be. Yeah, maybe you can pass a lie detector test by saying it's not ET from Alpha Centauri, but maybe it's something else. And so you need to basically stop playing these verbal finesse and legerdemain games.
Yeah, I think one thing I've pointed out, for instance, with Mick West, he always says, well, show me the data, or show me the classified data. Well, he knows he's never going to see the classified data. It's a fool's errand. I think it's the same thing with what these guys are doing. If they do not lay out what the threshold is, they can continue to move the goalpost and obviously arrive at the conclusion that they are trying to put out to the public. It's insane.
Well, I think a lot of us had positive expectations about AARO, that we were going to be bringing true scientists on board, that they were putting a physicist like Kirkpatrick, to lead it. We were going to have serious scientists. I mean, not the debunkers like the person you just mentioned. He's not serious.
Right.
Yeah. And so we just it's just the days are done to even consider that person. But what they've done though by not coming forward and using the rules of science that they claimed that they were going to do is they basically given everybody the opportunity to point out that in fact they're worse than the debunkers, because the debunkers at least believe in what they're doing. These people believe in putting out disinformation and lying, right? They are purposefully changing the thing. And in science, that's called fraud. In science, that kind of fraud is what gets you has you lose your job. So, the question for me is at what point are they being allowed to lie? And at what point are they ever going to be called to the mat? And, but again, I want to make sure that people understand, I'm not saying that I know what the conclusion is. What I'm saying is that they are throwing out a potential answer before they've truly considered the data correctly. That's the sort of stuff that gets you yelled at in my group meeting.
Understandable. Understandable. It's in my view, it's propaganda. It's really nothing short of that, and it jeopardizes the national security of the United States when you have the Pentagon blatantly, in my view, lying to the American public and misleading Congress.
Well, and look at the problem that they couldn't even get Harry Reid's home state right.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, who was double checking it? You could have at least passed it through ChatGPT and gotten that part fixed. They literally, this is one of the things from the people on the inside, one of the people who were upset about it. They literally said, we referenced a wiki fandom site for our sourcing.
Wow.
Wiki fandom. You know what wiki fandom is used for?
No.
Like the Lord of the Rings, universe trilogies and video games, wiki sites. That's a government report. That's ridiculous. I don't know. What that tells you is the lack of seriousness that they used to put the thing together, and then the lack of, frankly, just cross-checking what it was that they were using as source material.
For sure. And I think one of the interesting things as well is you have Kirkpatrick essentially trying to push a conspiracy theory about a conspiracy theory in his view. He spun this whole conspiracy theory, and he's on this sort of, I don't know what you want to call a press tour or whatever, that is essentially saying that former members of our national security establishment, people with TSSCI clearance, have duped Congress into this whole thing. So here he is, Kirkpatrick, once again, without evidence, putting forth a conspiracy theory and putting it into a government report. It leaves you speechless. It truly does.
Well, it seems like a retribution tour. The man left with a cloud of, frankly, in my opinion, questions about his roles there, and frankly, in prior places that he had been. It's sort of like this kind of sense of questioning seems to follow him wherever he goes. So I feel sorry for where he is right now, because, perhaps his tenure will last there as long as it's lasted everywhere else. But this report is now 3 months past him even being there. So why does it still seem to have his stamp on it? That I don't understand that. You would hope that the people who came in after it would have had some ability to right the ship.
Yeah, and the thing that blows me away too, and we got into this a little bit in my deep dive on this whole thing, is how he is still advising AARO in an unpaid way. It just is insane. So at the end of the day, Dr. Nolan, do you think this will derail Congress in their effort to get to the truth of this?
No. This is the problem. This report is so over the top bad that everybody knows what it is that it was meant to do. And the very fact that they, had a bunch of pet news agencies come in ahead of time and do this. Everybody knew about that. They didn't want anybody to know that. That got leaked to Ross Coulthart. And so, the jig is up. Congress knows what you're up to.
Yeah.
Congress actually has the reports. The ICIG has the reports, and everybody knows that the people who know things didn't go to AARO because they didn't trust them in the first place. So, yes, they'll have a blip in the newspapers for the next week or so, and I'll hear about it from an occasional colleague here or there. But if anything, it just strengthens everybody's resolve to get to the truth. And I don't know what the truth is. The truth will come through the application of appropriate science and the logic, et cetera, and doing it. And that's what science has learned how to do over the last few centuries. And so, we'll just be patient and continue to do the work and chin up, move forward.
I couldn't agree more. That's really all we can do, and just keep the pressure on. Well, Dr. Nolan, thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see what part two has in store. Something tells me it's not going to be a very pleasing sequel, but I don't know. You never know. Anyway, thank you. All right, Dr. Nolan, thanks for joining us.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't know about about 2.0 of whatever this next AARO report is going to be. I'm just not confident, judging on what 1.0 was, which was a piece of garbage. Okay, our next guest is no stranger to the UFO topic. While mainstream journalists are busy parroting the Pentagon, he is one of the few journalists actually doing true journalistic work covering UAP. Please welcome, from News Nation investigative journalist Ross Coulthart. Ross, how are you, sir?
G'day, Matt. How are you? Gee, I was writing down so many of the comments that Professor Garry Nolan made, because what was that one he had? It was a scientific masterclass in scientific bias. I just loved it. Absolutely loved it. I love it when a good scientist puts the boot into poor quality science. And frankly, that's at the heart of all of this, Matt, that AARO has diminished itself. And it's sad, because there are good people in AARO who determinedly want to investigate this subject. And we've got a situation where, frankly, a buffoon was put in charge of the joint, and he's allowed his confirmational bias to dictate what comes out.
Yeah, that is for sure. If you don't mind, maybe kind of push your camera over to one side. I'm kind of chopping your head off a little bit there. There we go.
Oh, sure.
All right,
Sorry.
great.
How's that?
So
sorry about that. Yep.
No, all good. So what is your overall take on this report?
I think the report is a joke. Honestly, it's like a dog ate my homework. Frankly, I cannot believe that they claim to have done this historical review in an objective, fair, and balanced way. It's an exercise in scientific chicanery. And as Garry has inferred very strongly, if not expressly, it's a fraud. It's a fraud on the American public and the rest of the world. It's not objective science. But the thing I love, as Garry pointed out, there's things like they got the home state for Harry Reid, Senator Harry Reid, one of the giants of this subject, wrong. There's references. There's a fantastic takedown of the whole report today from Robert Powell of the Scientific Coalition for the Investigation of UAPs. And Robert's just gone through the references and the footnotes, and some of the references don't work. It's like they've just cobbled this together in a real hurry. Oh, shit, we've got to do the historical review by June. Christ,
right.
Let's get it out there as fast as possible. And look, I don't think there was ever really any genuine intention from Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick in doing a fair and objective report. And I think the best illustration of that is the fact that he tried to exclude me and other journalists who were interested in covering this subject, like yourself, from the briefing. And yes, I was leaked the details of the briefing by people inside AARO who were upset that this was happening, because they felt that this was diminishing their genuine efforts to take this subject seriously. That's the problem. The Pentagon doesn't seem to realize that it's no longer the amorphous blob that it used to be. It's living in the 1950s, when it felt it could hold a news conference and control the narrative. The days when you could walk across the town of Roswell and tell people not to talk about what they saw, and people would just blithely, obediently, heed that, are well and truly over. Yes, you do have court stenographers like the New York Times who do their bidding because they need to be fed their national security stories. But Matt, what's really interesting is what a total fail this report is. I would love to be able to say that, they've tried, they've really done a good job. But as Garry says, they didn't even present the data in their document. They just make sweeping assertions that they've investigated these things and found them to be baseless. And what I know from the inside, from people who've been involved in these investigations and from people who've been witnesses who've come forward to AARO, is no genuine effort was really made to investigate these allegations, because under the rules that AARO was operating under, it literally did not have the ability to depose people, put them under oath, and it didn't have the ability, even though it should have asked for it, it didn't have the ability to go into these alleged locations and facilities and inspect them for themselves. And look, let's just step back for a moment. Let's assume for a moment that it's true that there is a massive international cover-up of a presence of non-human intelligence on this planet, and that the Pentagon is the ringmaster, the gatekeeper to this knowledge, or certain individuals within the Pentagon. Do we honestly think that the Pentagon is going to fairly and objectively investigate? No, of course not.
Not a chance in hell.
And the big inconsistency to me in all of this, Matt, and people are missing this point, and I've been saying it as often as I possibly can, is that there is a very clear conflict between what the DNI has been advised by the intelligence community Inspector General, and the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, is breathtakingly silent in response to the AARO report. Every time anybody asks them a question, they panic and duck past to Susan Goff over at the Pentagon. And I'm sorry, people aren't going to buy it, because the intelligence community Inspector General has made a finding, a determination based on oral and written evidence from witnesses who were put under oath, who testified under oath to the intelligence community Inspector General, and he investigated their allegations of a retrieval program operating in the black without the correct oversight procedures required by Congress, and he's found those allegations to be credible. Now, remind yourself about that. When people are standing in front of the mirror in the morning, put it up on a yellow Post-it note and remind yourself of that fact. That is the reality. Any debunker can squawk as much as they like. We know for a fact that the intelligence community Inspector General testified to Congress that that was his finding earlier this year, last year. So we have this situation now where there is a direct conflict between two arms of government. One of them is lying. Now, I know it's the Pentagon. I don't know if they're intentionally lying, but there are certainly individuals in the Pentagon who know that the truth is completely different to what they're representing. And it's a very interesting situation we face here, Matt, because this is now a constitutional crisis, and I'm not saying this lightly. There is an executive order that President Ronald Reagan put into law, 12333. Everybody should read this executive order. It banned assassinations by the CIA and other intelligence agencies without proper legal authorization. And it also banned covert actions doing influence operations and media manipulation of the American people. And this came in the wake of the Church Commission revelations in the 1970s, when there were most horrific allegations made of the CIA actively involving itself in criminal behavior against the American public, illegal intelligence gathering operations against the American public. Now, I'm here to tell you the reason why people are talking to me is because there are good people, good patriots, people who care about the law, people who care about accountability and control and transparency inside the defense and intelligence community, who realize that there are heinous crimes being committed against the American people. And that includes a media campaign, a media manipulation campaign being run by people who know full well that they are lying to the American public. And nothing better illustrates that than the position of the intelligence community Inspector General, who has found David Grusch's allegations to be credible and urgent. And for those squawkers out there who say that the allegations made by David Grusch didn't include the allegations of an illegal retrieval program and reverse engineering program improperly being kept from the American public, it did. It absolutely did. David's confirmed that to me multiple times, and moreover, I've confirmed it with people in the Congress. It is absolutely clear that the Congress is determined to continue to investigate this matter. The great thing about it is it's bipartisan. And so you've got this ridiculous old dinosaur, the Pentagon, which is basically clinging on to the idea that it can issue these stentorian declarations from on high, and everybody's going to meekly go back to their desks like the court stenographers at the New York Times. It ain't going to happen, because what has happened at the same time as this story coming into the public arena is social media. It's shows like yours, it's shows like mine, where social media is filling the gap that mainstream media is failing to fill. I'm about to start a new show on News Nation called Reality Check, which will largely be operating through YouTube. And that's because we recognize there's a huge audience out there online that's not being met by cable TV or free-to-air. Young kids these days do not engage with their media through free-to-air terrestrial media all the time. They do it through online. They want to do their own analysis. They want to hear the facts for themselves. And that's what's really interesting about this subject. That's why I'm so overwhelmed by so many people wanting to talk to me. That's because there's a huge audience out there who they've got the wisdom of the crowd. They are aware that they're being lied to. And the Pentagon can say as much as they like. They can put out these crap reports as much as they like. It's not going to change things. The story will out. Truth will out.
I couldn't agree with you more. And congratulations on your new show. I can't wait to see it. This is really fantastic news. So going back to Congress, have you spoken to members of Congress following this report? Have you received any sort of feedback or thoughts on what they think of Dr. Shan Kirkpatrick's shit show report?
I've spoken to multiple people in the Congress, both before and after the report. A lot of people knew this report was coming. It's no surprise. I mean, the simple fact is everybody is telling me it's a joke. And one person actually said to me this morning, what on earth was Kirkpatrick, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, thinking he might achieve by doing this? Because frankly, all he comes across as is a slightly bitter person who I suspect has been pushed out of the job because he hated it so much and displayed his lack of objective rigor in the way he conducted himself. As Professor Garry Nolan says, what has been perpetrated is a masterclass in scientific fraud. It's a joke. And everybody knew that. Everybody in Congress. I was in Washington 2 weeks ago, and people knew this report was coming. And they were saying to me, look, brace yourself. It's going to be the whitewash we all expect it is. And there are people, staffers on top oversight committees who have heard direct evidence from first-hand witnesses, some of whom refused point blank to go to AARO because they didn't trust AARO to do a proper objective assessment. And they're saying to me, why should anyone trust the Pentagon to do these kind of investigations? So yes, the Congress is determined to press ahead. My understanding is that there will very soon be announced moves to go towards more public hearings. As is circulating on social media at the moment. It's not official yet, but there are reports that David Grusch might be taking a role in Congress, and I can't comment about that, but I do note that is now being reported, and that's very interesting to see. I think there are some very interesting things coming up for the rest of 2024, Matt, and the thing that I can reassure you is if people really think in the Pentagon they can put it back in the box by perpetrating such a joke report on the American public and the rest of the world, they've got another thing coming.
They do indeed. Now I referenced earlier in the analysis I did on this whole report that legacy program Gatekeepers have been advising Kirkpatrick, and we were one of the first people to reveal this months back that Kirkpatrick had people that were actually managing or had been managing the legacy UFO crash retrieval and back-end engineering program, that he had brought those people on board to advise him. I think we've kind of seen the result of that. And I understand earlier that you posted that you actually know the names of these people. Do you plan on revealing them?
Yes, actually, I forgot it was you that had that scoop, Matt. It was you. It was the advisory group to Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick that he was keeping very, very secret. But there were, again, people in AARO who were quite alarmed to discover that their boss, the head of AARO, was taking advice from a group of advisors who, frankly, were totally and utterly compromised. And I can't name them just yet. I've got plans about what I want to do. But what I can tell you is that these are people whom I know are directly involved as legacy program gatekeepers. One of them sat on the National Security Council with Dick Cheney in his White House years. It's very, very interesting to see the people who are now being revealed to me as the people involved in, frankly, this cover-up. And yes, they are going to be named. They are going to be revealed. There is going to be an unveiling of who these people are in my own good time.
Yeah,
there's an awful lot. There's an awful lot leaking out of the woodwork right now. And look, as Garry said, these are dangerous times. These are desperate people. They are concealing. I mean, I know it's easy to be flippant about this, but they are concealing crimes, evil crimes. I wish I could say more. I mean, I am truly shocked that American democracy has come to this. There is a stain on American democracy that goes back 50, 60, 70 years. It is an unresolved issue within the entire national security complex that has never been properly addressed. It's a cancer, and it's going to be cut out. And there's bipartisan agreement on this. And what's interesting is the gatekeepers are getting nervous, and so are their foot soldiers. What's very interesting is it's all starting to crumble. It's like the edifice. I was so privileged in the 1980s to cover the fall of the Berlin Wall. It was a privilege. It was a huge moment in human history. And what was sensational about that was to realize that this edifice of the former Soviet Union was just collapsing, that the lies that had been told about it being this indomitable power were revealed to essentially be a fabrication. And what we'd done very cleverly was force the Soviet Union into bankruptcy in a perpetual arms race that had eventually driven it into collapsing from within. And that's what's happening now with the Pentagon's behavior on the UAP issue. There are great people in the Pentagon, really good people. I mean, I've been privileged to meet some of these people in country in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, two completely misguided wars. But great American patriots fought those wars and did them honorably on behalf of the country and tried to minimize casualties. But the people who were driving these senseless wars, some of those people are also the people who are driving this absurd cover-up about this legacy program. And the control that they've had over the whole military-industrial complex for the last 50, 60, 70 years, I think it's slowly coming to an end. And I think it might be the UAP issue that actually brings it to its denouement. They're very, very nervous, and they should be.
They should be indeed. I would venture to guess a lot of people are going to hear about the Cheney family when it comes to this whole thing. That's all I'm going to say. So last question for you, Ross. Do you expect, obviously everyone is enraged by this garbage that the Pentagon has shoveled upon the American public. I think everybody is enraged by the press censorship and the outright psychological operation that Susan Go and her seniors and minions have really perpetrated on the United States in terms of an outright attack on free press. Final question: do you think that this will motivate whistleblowers and others to finally just say, "F it, we're coming out and we're talking"?
What the Pentagon's relying on, Matt, is the security oath. And the way it works in the defense community, if you don't keep your security oath, you lose your livelihood. And so it's a very effective cudgel, and it's been used to great effect over many years. But what's really quite exciting, and I only realized this when I was in Washington a couple of weeks ago, is the extent to which people have come forward to Congress The birds have already flown the coop. The evidence has already been given under oath to the key oversight committees, the Senate Intelligence Oversight Committee, the Senate Armed Services Committee, and despite the best efforts of certain congressional representatives, committees in the House, like the House Armed Services Committee and the House Intelligence Committee and the House Oversight Committee. Those committees are all now in possession of first-hand, direct witness evidence under oath of the existence of a legacy retrieval reverse engineering program that has been operating illegally in America and indeed overseas for quite a number of decades. And that revelation has shocked key senators and congressional representatives. And there is a bipartisan push, much more than I realized, to actually get this exposed, revealed, and the cancer that caused it cut out. And we are, I think, at a very interesting tipping point in American history. And it all sounds very pompous, but if you go back through history and look at the mistakes that have been made, notably 9/11, the intelligence failures there, Iran-Contra, the oversight failures there, Watergate, the oversight failures there, the assassination of John F. Kennedy, the incredible oversight failures there, the illegal operations conducted through the 50s and the 60s by the CIA, still unresolved, and still the full extent of them never properly explained or revealed. That's all part of this. This is
first-hand
really
knowledge.
It's really interesting. You're talking about first-hand knowledge, people who under oath, unlike what AARO did. What AARO did was, I think, just run in. This isn't me being flippant. This is actually what they did do. They literally went to meet the Defence Aerospace bosses, the Northrop Grummans, the Lockheed Martins, and they sat down with them. They didn't put them under oath. They didn't have the power to. And they asked, look, chaps, we hear you've got a reverse engineering program involving recovered NHI craft. Is that true? Of course not. Of course not. And the thing is, that's then what they went back and reported. And the irony is, under the rules that those corporations operate under, they're legally required under the WUSAP, the Waived Unacknowledged Special Access Program that they're tied into, to lie to anyone not read into the program. People forget this. It's an obligation under national security laws in the United States to dissemble or lie to conceal the existence of a super secret program. And that's exactly what they did. And frankly, the interesting thing that we have now, the situation that we have now, is you have committees that do have the power. The Senate Select Committee for Intelligence, the Senate Armed Services Committee, the committees that did an enormous amount back in the 70s to expose Watergate and later in the 80s to expose Iran-Contra. Believe me, they've got their knives sharpened and their teeth gleaming. They're ready to get in there hard. I'm very excited because this is a really important moment in American history. And yes, the court stenographers from the New York Times and the Washington Post, they've fallen by the wayside. And that's a reflection of the increasing irrelevance of traditional masthead mainstream media. Organizations like News Nation are far more nimble. Programs like yours are far more nimble. And our audience, it doesn't get its news anymore from those mastheads. So we need to stop worrying about what they say and just keep on digging, keep on asking questions, keep on probing. And sooner or later, truth will out.
I love that. Ross, I don't think you know this about me, but I'm actually an alien hybrid. So I've frozen myself, and I'm actually communicating with the show just via telepathically. So I may not react to you, but yeah, for some reason my camera is frozen, which it has been a really weird day. I've had all these bizarre, like my phone ringing, my cell phone ringing off the hook with these weird numbers, and And now you have to stare at my serious face. But anyway, I'm going to try hopping off here and resetting the camera. But Ross, I just wanted to say thank you for joining us, and as always, thank you for your friendship. And man, I have to say, when I met you at Seoul, and I've worked in the television business for a very long time, I'm not often starstruck, but at one point in that morning when I was sitting at that Starbucks having coffee with you, I said to myself, "Oh my God, I'm having coffee with Ross Coulthart." It was a very big moment for me. But anyway, I appreciate it, and I understand you have a special coming out next week on News Nation. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, we're going to be taking a long, hard look ourselves at the whole state of the UAP issue. I'm also, this new show that I'm doing, it's not exclusively a UAP-focused show. As you know, I like investigating things, and I think it's time that there was a program on American TV that did the kind of rigorous long-form investigation that I like doing. And boy, there's a lot to dig into in your beautiful country.
Yes, there is. All right, Ross Coulthart, thanking you with my telepathic powers here. Thank you for coming on. We know that you've got a lot of other hits to do, so thank you very much for coming, and look forward to your new endeavors.
It's a real pleasure, Matt. All the best to you and your listeners.
Awesome. Okay, thank you. All right, folks, let's see. So I'm going to try and answer some questions, even though I'm completely frozen here. So what I'm going to do is put up the show thumbnail and certainly bizarre. Oh, sorry. There we go. Now we're back. Anyway, I'm going to try resetting the camera here and see if we can figure out what is going on. So I'm going to put myself on mute. You can stare at this nice thumbnail, and hopefully in a couple minutes I'll have the camera back up and I'll answer some of your questions. So please stand by. Okie dokie, well that didn't work. So what we're going to try doing is I'm going to shut my software down, reconnect, so we'll see if that works. If it doesn't, we'll catch you on the next one, but I have a pretty good feeling once I reset this, it will come back. So again, sorry for the technical difficulties. I'm literally a one-man show. I have no staff. You're looking at it. So this is kind of the thrilling part of doing things live. So we will be back hopefully in just mere moments. Right, I think that I'm back up. That was really weird. Hopefully this will come back up. It looks like it might. There's always a delay between what we see here. Let's see here. I'm going to leave a little chat. I think we are coming back up. We will find out shortly. And let's see, not sure if this is broadcasting. So if somebody is seeing this, okay, I'm back. We are good, although it's not showing it here. Yeah, it's, as I say, I've had people like email me and say, what size staff do you have? And you are literally looking at it. And one of the things, when I was first doing this, I thought, I'll do all of this as a pre-tape, and it's safer. You can edit things. You can make it much more polished. But number one, editing takes a very long time. And secondarily, and more importantly, I really enjoyed doing things live and interacting with people. So it says, yeah, we see you. Okay, great. All right. Thanks for that. Thanks for your understanding. We're always something interesting going on here. That is for sure. So we had to let Ross go. He had other engagements, of course, with all of this news going on. He's a very busy man. So I want to go through here and go through some of the questions and talk a little bit more about what we spoke about. One question was, does the panel know if the AARO report is being done, from Dave Smethurst, being done on behalf of the Comptroller General? And if so, did they sign it off? This is hard to believe, as the Comptroller General controls the Inspector Generals. I literally have no idea, Dave. That's a really good question. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to ask that of Ross. And of course, we recorded the interview with Garry Nolan earlier today. And yeah, okay, sound and audio good here. And I'm hoping that I'm showing up. Okay, let's see. Question, please ask Ross about meetings with the senators. So I think that this was really good news, in that the senators, one of the things we learned from Ross, number one, they have received firsthand classified testimony, firsthand witnesses that are part of the crash retrieval program, or were part of the crash retrieval program. This isn't second or third. This isn't ask your cousin or trust me, bro. These are people that went in and testified to Congress in a classified setting, people with firsthand knowledge. And now, despite what the debunkers are going to tell you, the debunkers, this is firsthand knowledge. This isn't just some secondhand thing. So when it comes to these debunkers, they have an agenda. Most of them, in my opinion, are paid. I think we will find that out. And you can't trust a damn thing that these guys say. Mick West, any of these folks, they are doing this for a living. They're not just doing it for fun. I'll say that. Okay, let's see. Dr. Tim Taylor, thank you, sir, for the nice super chat. Thank you for this content. Keep your chin up. I will definitely do that, especially when my camera goes offline. KD, thank you for the super chat. Melissa Hogan asks, do you know if when more whistleblowers are coming forward soon, I hope? So what Ross was speaking about, and I have family that are in the military, so I understand this world somewhat well. Let's just say you work for the government and you have a security clearance. That security clearance is your golden ticket for employment post Pentagon, post IC, post whatever you were doing. As long as that security clearance is intact, and understand that these security clearances, obtaining them, especially a secret or top secret security clearance, these costs, thousands upon thousands of dollars to get. So once you have that clearance, it is a currency. And what the Pentagon does is, when you're a part of a classified program, a special access program, or any sort of program that requires you to sign a national security non-disclosure agreement, if you violate that agreement, it's time in Leavenworth, loss of security clearance, which means loss of your future livelihood, I think it was $10,000 fine, and loss of your pension. So if you're that person and you have this clearance, or even if you no longer have this clearance, the non-disclosure agreement that you have signed, that is for life. So when you have these clowns coming forward on or spouting off on Twitter, or Mick West, or any of these other just absolute idiots that are saying, just, spill the beans. If you have this evidence, just dump it. Well, the reality is it is not, firstly, these people, they don't know us a damn thing. They really don't. They don't owe me anything. They certainly don't owe the debunkers anything. And at the end of the day, these folks, they have to worry about their livelihood. They have to worry about their family. They have to worry about not doing something that would inadvertently damage national security. None of us want to do that. But to expect these folks to just throw it all away and dump it all without fear of repercussion or legal jeopardy, that is an unfair ask of these people. Now, I do think that there will probably be people that will find ways to come forward with this. A lot of these folks, not some of them, but all of them, when they sign this national security non-disclosure agreement, they look at something called the Security Classification Guide. This guide is a well thought out document that tells them exactly what they can say, what they cannot say, and if they're caught, what cover story they can say. Now, they know the ins and outs of this thing. They know, for instance, when you hear David Grusch talk or Lou Elizondo, they are talking about this topic and they are riding it right up to the red line. They're not going to cross the red line because they know that the Pentagon, the CIA, the FBI, AFOSI, they are sitting there waiting for them to slip up. So when you hear people say, David Grusch, why doesn't he just talk about everything he knows? Or Lou Elizondo, why doesn't he just dump everything he knows? They can't do that. And that is an unfair, unrealistic expectation to think otherwise. Okay, Science Bob. I love Science Bob. I want to have him on the show. Thank you very much for the super chat. He says, good work. And let's see here, Mike Bartlett, will you be getting an interview with Lou or Grusch this year? I do know that Lou has a agreement in place that he cannot appear on any sort of outlet, I believe, until his some things come out. I don't know if it's his book or movie, but I would certainly welcome the opportunity to have David Grusch or Lou Elizondo on my show anytime. I'm certainly keeping my fingers crossed for that. Terrence Willis, who would you like to interview that you haven't had a chance to interview yet? P.S. You are awesome. Firstly, Terrence, thank you very much. I would say Lou Elizondo, David Grusch, and Hal Puthoff. Those would be the three that would be my absolute dream to have them on the show. And Colonel Carl Nell. Daryl, thank you for the super chat. Have you ever asked Ross about the giant UFO he said he knows exists and knows where it is? I have asked Ross about this, offline, of course. And here's the thing. And I think probably part of what has helped me build relationships in this community with in the DoD and IC community and elsewhere is that I don't ask too many questions. And what I mean by that is I don't ask questions that I know people are not going to be able to answer. It puts them on the spot and makes them uncomfortable. And I know that Ross will share that information when he decides he is going to share that information. So, so I think that's it. So I'm just kind of going down. I have a signal window open here with my mod chats, and one of them says, on the double shot, you look frozen. And yeah, it's because I was. My audio is bad, but I think the audio is here. Shaq Valet, thank you very much for the super chat. Gus Nilio, thank you so much for the super chat. You're really putting on a great show together today. And thank you to all of your staff, which would be me. You're looking at our production staff right here. Hopefully one day this show will get picked up and I'll be able to do this thing for a living and hopefully get paid well for it. I'm a liberal capitalist. I see absolutely nothing wrong with making money at doing what you love. And of course, the absolutely insane debunkers will tell you it's bilking and all this kind of stuff, or grifting, all of that. They're full of shit. Don't listen to a thing they have to say. literally a fountain of garbage that comes out of these debunkers' mouths. So I'm just going to kind of riff here for a little bit. I'm not on prompter. Earlier I was reading off the prompter, which is why I was stumbling a bit. But you know, the one thing that everyone I think should really stop and consider is the blatant disinformation campaign, campaign that Susan Go and the Pentagon are operating on the American public. It is un-American. At one point, we're going to do a special talking a little bit about the history of our government buying journalists. This was revealed, as Ross referenced earlier in the show, by the Church Commission. And essentially what it was, the CIA was paying American journalists, paying them or compensating them or in many cases, giving them exclusive access, like what you just saw with Susan Go and the Pentagon, giving journalists exclusive access if they toe the Pentagon and the CIA's line. So think about that. You have the Pentagon, you have the Central Intelligence Agency paying journalists or promising them some kind of benefit if they play by the rules. Now, what I suggested to Chris Sharp earlier, because Chris Sharp was cut out, Ross Coulthart at News Nation was cut out, News Nation was cut out. Think about that. So Susan Go, I can tell you, had made these folks agree to some set of rules, and when they agreed to those set of rules, she then gave them access. Now, she didn't extend this offer to Ross Coulthart, to Chris Sharp, to Mark von Rennenkamp, to people that actually know about this topic and know exactly the questions to ask. They didn't ask Sharp or Ross or Mark or others that would actually ask the Pentagon hard questions. No. They gave access to people like Julian Barnes, the hack journalist at the New York Times that is nothing more than a Pentagon parrot. They gave access to those journalists because what they wanted was to spin this piece of garbage out to the American public. They knew that if they gave this to Julian Barnes at the New York Times and these other outlets that would talk about space aliens and extraterrestrials, that CNN, the other news outlets, all they would do is they would read what Julian Barnes wrote or what another outlet that was given unfair access to this, that they would just parrot it. And look at what's happened. You look at all the headlines. No evidence of space aliens. Because that's exactly the kind of loaded language that the Pentagon, that the CIA wants to have out in the open. And why? Because they know that the American public's attention span is very short. You look at the headline, no space aliens. All right, let's go talk about something else. That is what is going on. And it's un-American, and it is a travesty. So when you have people like Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, Ronald Moultrie, who purposefully refused to be briefed on the UAP issue before showing up to Congress. Susan Go, who is cutting backroom deals with journalists that are going to do her bidding. It is un-American. It is undemocratic. And people, frankly, should be mad as hell that this is going on. And if it were me, I would be calling my representative, my congressman or woman that is representing my district, call my senator and say, why is this going on? Why are you allowing this to go on? Why are you, as my representative, not calling out the bullshit and the propaganda that the Pentagon and the Central Intelligence Agency are pulling on the American public? I'm telling you, it is illegal. Now, laws, and Ross Coulthart spoke about this earlier, but all of this was supposed to have ended with the Church Commission. Now, the Church Commission didn't only reveal that the CIA had bought and paid for American journalists, but not only journalists, news editors. They had direct relationships with the leadership of CBS, ABC, and others. But the Church Commission also found things, for instance, that I think it was the CIA and the Army developed a biological weapons program and methods for deploying these weapons without consulting Congress. The CIA had a program where they drugged American citizens. They would lure Johns into CIA safe houses in San Francisco that were set up as brothels. They would get these Johns in, lace them with LSD, and then they would interrogate them. The CIA wanted to know exactly how effective LSD, acid, whatever, would be as a interrogation tool. And then, of course, these folks that had gone to the brothel, they're not gonna squawk. They don't want to go to jail. They don't want to cause problems in their personal lives. There was another program to assassinate foreign leaders that was kept from Congress. So at the end of the day, when you look at it, the CIA, the Pentagon, has a history of lying to you, the American public, and lying to Congress. And we see right now, this pattern is completely, they're not changing their tune. Now, what Ross also mentioned as well, and we have mentioned it on this program numerous times, these people that have been running this illegal operation, most of these people will be criminally liable. Now, you've heard Lou Elizondo and others talk about reconciliation, and I am a big fan of reconciliation. And for the good people in the Pentagon, for the good people in the CIA, and there are those that are listening, the thing to keep in mind is the American public, we are a forgiving public. The sooner they arrive, the sooner they put this out and ask for reconciliation, the better it is going to go for the government, the better it is going to go for the CIA, the better it is going to go for the Pentagon. But the longer that these folks drag this stuff out, blatantly lie to you, blatantly enlist the New York Times and other outlets to parrot propaganda to the American public, to the electorate, to Congress, to congressional staffers, that reconciliation is not going to go well. And friends, all of us here, regardless of party, we know that there is a significant issue in trust of government, and it has got to end. You know, we spoke about in the Daily Mail, for those of you that have not seen the Daily Mail article that Chris Sharp, Josh Boswell, and I wrote that came out in November that detailed the CIA's illegal program to recover these non-human craft run out of a secret program under the CIA Directorate of Science and Technology called the Office of Global Access. An office, by the way, that is so secret, they have, after our report, have gone to extraordinary lengths to remove any reference to the Office of Global Access. They run this program, and they run this program to recover these vehicles. They run it illegally. They sometimes task these recovery operations to Joint Special Operations Command. JSOC is in charge of our Tier 1 operators, so they send our men and women in uniform, our Navy SEALs and other Tier 1 operators to recover these vehicles. But what we also uncovered is the CIA, the Office of Global Access, tasks these recovery operations to private aerospace. Where is the oversight in that? What is the decision tree where they are deciding? How do we know what what the reasoning is between when they decide to have our men and women in uniform recover these things versus giving it illegally to private contractors to recover these things. People, you should ask your congressional representatives what exactly the CIA Office of Global Access does, and I think you will be surprised. And one of the things that I think you will be surprised about is that they do not want to talk about it. I guarantee you. Any reporter that sits in the Pentagon press office or at the Pentagon press briefing, if they ask the Pentagon, what does the CIA Office of Global Access do? You'll probably see them turn about 3 shades of white. This is the same group who you have in JSOC, a rogue group of operators that have murdered people, that have harassed people, engaged in what in the business is called wet works. This is going on in America, and it is truly a travesty. Now, all of this, and when you stop and think about this, at the end of the day, and this is something that we have been messaging to members of Congress, this is a oversight issue. At the end of the day, how can we expect our lawmakers to legislate on behalf of you, the American people, if stuff is hidden from them, if national security issues are hidden from them illegally? You cannot expect them to effectively legislate when it comes to the national security of the United States when they are lied to, when they are kept in the dark. You cannot expect the President of the United States, and sources have told me that President Biden has not been read into this, by the way. Trump was, Obama was, but apparently Biden is not. Now, I don't know if that's true. But think about it. How can you as president, as the leader of the nation, execute foreign policy if, say, that no one told the president that Russia was here? That no one told the president that Russia has, thousands of nuclear weapons aimed at us? If these people, this group of 50-ish senior executive service level employees that have managed this serial lie for decades, if they have decided for all of us that the people we elect, people in Congress and the president, are just temporary employees and they don't need to know what the fuck is going on, that is un-American. That is not what this country is founded on. Our founding fathers, frankly, would just, I'm sure they're rolling in their grave knowing what is going on. And folks, this is going on. This is not secondhand knowledge. This isn't third-hand knowledge. This is going on. In my conversations with certain staffers in Congress, they know that what we are talking about is not Russian or Chinese balloons. They are well aware of the existence of this crash recovery and back engineering program. They are well aware that they have been lied to by the CIA, by the Pentagon, and they know that that lying is continuing. And I'm telling you, heads will roll when all this comes out. Now, there are certain people that I think will probably, should have some forgiveness, we'll just say. People that did this for the right reason back in the day, those that are still alive, that understood that we faced a great threat with the Cold War, and this would be the last thing that you would want to dump on the American people. But the people that have, especially this rogue element in JSOC, that have physically injured people, killed people, bugged people, threatened people with harassing phone calls, put tracking devices on people's cars. I know of one individual in particular Those people should face the full weight of the law and deserve to be put in prison for the rest of their life, in my opinion. So, at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, is this a country that we want to live in? Do we want to give these folks a pass? Do we want to look the other way and say, you know what, I'm just going to buy whatever the Pentagon tells me. I'm going to buy whatever Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick and his dumpster fire leadership have provided us in terms of this report. It's wrong, and we cannot stand for any of this. Absolutely not. Another thing that I think that all of us need to ask of our representatives is clarification, and to find out through the power of subpoena exactly who these gatekeepers are that have been advising AARO. These people from the Department of Energy who are stakeholders in this thing. All of this was classified under the 1954 Atomic Energy Act because they had a security infrastructure that worked for the Manhattan Project, and they overlaid it on top of the UAP issue. The question needs to be asked, why are these people that have engaged in this illegal activity, why are they now advising AARO? Why are they advising the Pentagon? It's a travesty. It is just absolutely insane. And I think all of us knew that this report would be nothing but pure garbage. And of course, it is not even worth the paper that it is printed on. It is pure garbage. And as Dr. Garry Nolan stated, Sean Kirkpatrick is basically saying, trust me, bro. Trust this conspiracy theory that members of Congress have been duped by this nutty group of UFO believers who happen to have all these super high security clearances, but they're a bunch of nuts. They want you. They literally think Sean Kirkpatrick thinks you are that stupid. They think the American public is that stupid. Susan Goff at the Pentagon thinks you are that stupid. Susan Goff, by the way, whose master's thesis was on psychological warfare, big surprise there. You're seeing that firsthand. Now, I don't know if this is true, and I think those of you, and this is the beauty of this whole thing, is all of us, we can crowdsource this. We can do our own research and post what we find on Twitter or on Reddit or wherever. But one of the things to look at, one of the questions is, you have these companies that are information and perception management companies. They're called IPMOs. Their whole job is to propagate the American point of view to, we'll say, adversarial companies overseas. Adversarial countries overseas. Now, from what I understand, there is absolutely nothing in law that prohibits IPMO contractors from holding them liable for whatever they put out from blowing back onto the U.S. I don't know if that's true, but it's something that we should certainly look at. And we have to hold these people accountable. It is wrong, and it's a travesty. And when you look at the sacrifices that all of these folks have made, David Grusch, Lou Elizondo, all of these folks that have sacrificed their career, sacrificed their well-being, their sometimes maybe the safety of their family, to go to Congress and tell them about all this, to testify about all of this in a classified hearing, classified setting. Why are they doing it? They do it because they love their country, because they know that what they have witnessed is wrong and un-American. It is a testimony. It is a testimony to selflessness that people like Lou Elizondo and David Grusch have shown to all of us of how to be selfless and how to put country before self. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the debunkers and the people that run Twitter accounts that they're some aerospace expert or whatnot. But all they're doing is they're just pushing out garbage. They're pushing out garbage for you to consume. They wake up. There's this guy named Chris who I think literally wakes up every day and thinks, how can I disparage David Grusch? How can I slander him? Now, I would venture to guess he's probably getting paid pretty well for this because it seems to be a full-time job. I've often said that people like Mick West, this seems to be a full-time job. I know if I were sitting in front of the computer 8 hours a day pushing out nonsense, I sure as hell would want to get paid for it. And I would venture to guess that these people are getting paid for it as well. You have Wikipedia. You have this group called the Guerrilla Skeptics who have been around since 2010, whose sole purpose is to target any Wikipedia page that they consider to be pseudoscience. That could be UFOs. It could be it is. It's UFOs. It's UAP. It's cryptids. It's massage therapy. It's acupuncture. It's chiropractic. These folks target these pages and twist the rules of Wikipedia for them to push their own version of propaganda. The person that runs this Wikipedia group, a lady by the name of Susan Gerbic, who has a 501c charity here in California called the About Time Project. She has stated unequivocally that as skeptics, as debunkers, that they understand that the number one most effective tool to propagate their belief system is through Wikipedia. Wikipedia being, I think, the 7th most trafficked site on the internet. They know that when somebody that has no idea about UAP wants to go look up something on UAP or UFOs, what are they going to do? They're going to go to Wikipedia. What are they going to find? They're going to find a biased page of just literally junk filled with loaded language like supposed whistleblower. I mean, I'd have to go back and look at it. But you go and you look at Mick West's page that the Guerrilla Skeptics write and maintain. It's freaking, it's absolutely pristine. And then you go and you look at David Grusch's page. It's a night and day difference. The Guerrilla Skeptics actually wrote Lou Elizondo's Wikipedia page. Why did they do it? Because they know that if they are first to write the Wikipedia page, they basically own it. They can own the narrative. They can kick out other editors that are trying to correct what they have on there. It's a travesty. It is nothing short of, it's just nothing short of propaganda. And it is really sad that you have the debunkers, and when I say debunkers, I'm not talking skeptics. It's good to be skeptical. But I'm talking about these professional debunkers that spend every ounce of their waking day trying to derail the truth. One of the most telling things I heard Mick West say was on his live stream on YouTube with Mark von Rennenkamp. Now, those of you that have been following Mark, he writes incredible op-eds for The Hill. And he has also been engaging with Mick and his acolytes from his website. I'm blanking on the name of it. I'm a little tired. But he engages with these people debunking Mick West's debunking. So he goes on Mick West's program, and I forgot exactly the quote. I'll find this and I will play it on a future show. But Mick slips and says something along the lines to Marek, well, your explanation is essentially founded on that there are space aliens running around. That's what Mick West said. Now, what does that tell you? That tells you where Mick West is operating from. He's operating from this belief that all of this is bullshit, and he works backwards from that. Now, I mentioned that he often says, well, as soon as I see the data, I'll believe it. Mick West is no dummy. He knows that he will never see the data that will change his mind. He knows he will never see classified multi-sensor data. He knows this. He's running a fool's errand. And he's lying to you when he's saying that when I see the data, I'll believe it. Just as Kirkpatrick and his kind of bullshit mission on AARO was to start from a preconceived result. He's, like I said, a year after being on, he already determined that all of this was bullshit. He told Senator Kirsten Gillibrand that. Why? Because he walked into that job to disprove all of this. So just the same as Mick West, starting from the position that this is all garbage, and then fitting the data or whatever his reasoning is to fit his conclusion, it's no different than what Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick has done. It is absolutely no different. So there you go. And here, and here's the issue. So people will say, show me the evidence. I want to see the evidence from the Pentagon. Are they going to show it to us? No. I've seen this stuff firsthand. I've had UAPs show up around 10 times above my home. I don't need daddy government. I don't need Big Daddy Ronald Moultrie. I don't need President Biden to tell me this is real. I've seen it with my own eyes. Family members have seen it with their own eyes. Family friends that have been here outside when this shit has shown up above my house. I don't need anybody to tell me it's real. I've seen it myself. But at the end of the day, these folks, they got to come clean with the American public. That is really what it boils down to. We deserve to know. Do we deserve to know absolutely everything that would possibly jeopardize national security? No. But Americans, people in the world, us as a species, we deserve to know our place in the universe. We deserve to know that we are the middle of the food chain. We deserve to know that the American Pentagon and the Central Intelligence Agency had been running illegal operations, hiding it from Congress, hiding it from presidents, hiding it from the American people. And in my opinion, it's all for power. And that is just absolutely sad. Okay, so I'm going to just kind of look through here, see if there were any other questions. I know I've been on a bit of a rant here. Somebody says here, Ned, people get your fight back on this. And that's really true. We have the power of social media. Social media can be used for good or bad, but when you use it for good, you can spread this information, tell people what is really going on. You can pick up the phone, call your representatives in Congress, and tell them that this is unacceptable. This is bullshit. We do not deserve to be treated like children. Okay. People got to fight on this. Rob Heatherly. Rob Heatherly has been doing amazing work on this Guerrilla Skeptics research. I think there's going to be a lot more that's going to come out of this. The activities, as from Hypnos, the activities of Mick West, etc., is essentially creating people that will spend their free time exposing them and changing the culture. I don't know. I can't think of any other reason why they would spend this inordinate amount of time other than they're being compensated for it. Now, one of the things that Rob Heatherly and Craig Weiler informed me about, which I didn't know about, was this group called the Center for Inquiry. You can go on Google and look for it. CFI, or Center for Inquiry, is a very sort of old organization of of skeptics. And this is not just some mom and pop outfit. This is a 501c run out of Amherst, New York, that has literally millions of dollars, something to the tune of, I think last year, $4.7 million that is going into this organization of debunkers. Who are members of this? Mick West, Guerrilla Skeptics founder Susan Gerbic, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye, the Science Guy. These are all star members of this debunker organization. This organization whose sole purpose is to behave as a media outfit to propagate propaganda on anything that they consider pseudoscience. That's what they do. So these folks, they have this organization, Center for Inquiry, this nonprofit, $4.7 million coming into them, something like that in 2023. You can go onto the IRS website, look up Form 990 for the Center for Inquiry in Amherst, New York, and you for yourself can view the amount of money that is going into this debunker organization. But more importantly, you can also view the amount of money leaving that organization. If I remember right, on 2023, they were in the red by something like $200,000 because they were paying money out. Now, who do they pay money out to? They pay money out to bloggers. This is in their Form 990. Bloggers who, what is a blogger? Somebody blogging on Twitter or Reddit. They state in their Form 990 that they are paying journalists to spread this garbage. It is in their IRS filing that they are putting this stuff out there. You can't make this shit up. It is literally in their IRS form. Now, what I hope happens, I hope that, and there is significant talk of this, that there will be legal action taken against the guerrilla skeptics, and I think in turn for the Center for Inquiry that will compel Center for Inquiry and the guerrilla skeptics through the power of subpoena and discovery to reveal exactly who their editors are, who this Lucky Louie is, to reveal exactly what kind of money trail is going on. And if indeed, like I believe, the Center for Inquiry is paying people like Mick West and others to propagate all of this, hopefully that'll all come out. Another thing, if you go and you look at the Form 990 for Center for Inquiry, they have literally dozens upon dozens of wire transfers from overseas to the tune of I think pretty much every single wire transfer into the Center for Inquiry was it was exactly 110,000 US dollars. People overseas wiring money to the Center for Inquiry to the tune of $110,000. Some of them were other amounts. Some of them were small, $2,000, $3,000. But you had blocks of $110,000, $50,000, $110,000, $110,000, $110,000. And then you have to ask yourself what people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is not an honest broker, let's face it. He goes on to CNN and all of these news outlets to talk about UAP as a unbiased science person, but at the end of the day, he's a debunker. He's a fraud, and that is how I would definitely characterize it. Sorry, we're going to go up here. Anyway, I think that's about it. If anyone has any other questions, I know I've been on a bit of a rant here, which I don't normally do. It is power, greed, and control. I do completely agree. Katkin stated that. Matt, military witness to UAP. Matt is in fire. Thank you very much. This fires me up. This should fire all of you up. And when you look at this report, it is just flat out insulting. It is insulting to me. It is insulting to you. And it's insulting to the Constitution of the United States, if you ask me. Let's see. Pentagon report used a wiki page reference, wiki fans reference. That tells you enough as it is. Yeah, I mean, Mick West essentially. Sorry, going back here, and Yeah, it's propagandized indeed. Yeah, it's just insane. Anyway, I think I've droned on quite a long time here. I really appreciate everyone sticking with us. I know this was a very deep dive. I would encourage all of you to share this video, especially where we really break down in detail what went on behind the scenes with Dr. Shan Kirkpatrick and AARO, and how this literal just dumpster fire of a program that Shan Kirkpatrick ran was just a waste of taxpayer money. It was dishonest to Congress, and really, Dr. Shan Kirkpatrick and his arrogance and ineptitude is a slap in the face to the good men and women that I do know exist at AARO, and the good men and women that do exist at the Pentagon and the intelligence community that are trying to do the right thing. So, call your lawmakers. Tell them this is unacceptable. Demand better. We deserve better. Tomorrow we have another great show on the Good Trouble Show. We have director Darcy Weir, who I don't have the title in front of me, but he just released a really great film on the UAP underwater phenomenon. And so we have him tomorrow at 12 noon Pacific. I hope all of you will tune in. Hopefully I won't have lost my voice. And everyone have a great Saturday night. We appreciate your support. Again, if you haven't given us a follow or subscribe, we really do appreciate it. Also, leave a comment. I do read all of the comments. I don't often have the chance to respond to all of them, but I do read them, and I do appreciate it. And thanks again to our chat moderators that have taken time out of their day to keep the chat civil. I do appreciate it. And we will see you guys tomorrow on the Good Trouble Show.